So let's talk through the contents of Games Workshop's mystery loot boxes. Were these supply boxes a good deal? Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where a couple of weeks ago around the new year we talked about Games Workshop's new supply drop offerings, sort of a loot crate type bundle from Games Workshop with some mystery 40k contents in them, and today I thought we'd do a follow-up video to find out what was in them and how good a deal it was for the people who bought them. To recap, or for those who didn't catch the first video, the idea of these Warhammer supply drops has been around before and they returned for the new year. Games Workshop loot crates that were available in the UK, Europe, Australia, New Zealand and Japan. There were 4 different offerings, one of them for Warhammer 40k, which I feel like was perhaps the big ticket item in most of those countries, and it's basically a kind of open secret that they basically amounts to a bit of a Games Workshop stock clearance. They bundle up some boxes that weren't selling amazingly well, give them really quite a big discount at 50%, but of course the caveat is that you don't know what you're getting, and it's not likely to be the biggest and best selling things in the 40k line. The general idea is that the boxes that are released within a region are the same contents for everyone who buys them there, but it might vary region on region. Say for example, the Australia one and the UK one, they were quite different. It does seem that mystery discount Warhammer 40k is enough to have these boxes sell out very, very quickly indeed. It looked like the Warhammer 40k one was gone about as soon as it was released in the vast majority of countries, though it was perhaps a little bit unclear as to how many there were on offer. If supply was quite limited, then it probably would have sold out fast regardless of how many people wanted it. With discount Warhammer in limited supply as well, there's always the chance that a decent amount of people might be reselling or scalping them. I feel like for the vast majority of products in Games Workshop's range, if you can guarantee getting them half price, then you probably can sell them back on eBay for more than that, so I guess it provides a bit of an opportunity for certain enterprising individuals. Not exactly the best news for the people who just wanted to buy them for the models though, I suppose. For this latest offering, the UK price was £65 and the Australian price was $170 Australian dollars. It shipped last weekend, and from having a bit of a search around, I could only find the contents of the UK and the Australian box sets. They've both been uploaded to Reddit a few times over now. If anyone happens to have any of the contents from the other regions, I'll try and add that in a pinned comment in the video down below. I must admit I was kind of interested to see what might actually be in these kind of boxes, both from a deal to the purchaser and the things that aren't selling so well from Games Workshop, perhaps some models that haven't done quite as well as they might have anticipated. First up, we've got the UK 40k supply drop. This one was £65, so roughly equating to around about €85 or 110 US dollars from Games Workshop. Obviously though, these are region locked. In this one, it was fairly orky. There's a custom booster blaster, 3 Deathcopters, and then a trio of characters from different factions, Fabius Bile, Dark Strider, and the Reductus Saboteur. Overall, that was a total cost, if you bought all of these separately from Games Workshop, of £138, so a theoretical discount of £73 or 52%. It does seem that they're sticking to that roughly half off discount. It is a bit better than you get from the vast majority of combat patrols or their battle force offerings. I guess it's a bit of a roll of the dice. If you want to add miniatures to any one army and you get one of these box sets, you could easily be getting something from a faction that you don't collect or you don't have that much interest in. If you just happen to be an orc player, I guess you've done okay out of this. 2 of those box sets at around about full price, then the extra characters free that you can either paint up as display pieces or resell, I suppose. Obviously with miniatures from 4 different factions, there's a reasonable chance that they wouldn't all be useful to everyone. I feel it's kind of notable that these are all at least fairly recent kits as well. I think the Orc Buggy is actually the oldest miniature out of the bunch here, and even that was from mid-8th edition, not exactly a long time ago. Fabius Bile was late 8th edition, and the Deathcopters, Dark Strider and the Saboteur are all 9th edition miniatures. Kind of nice that they're not just trying to get rid of really old kits here. I'd guess maybe that some of these releases are just ones they overproduced a bit, and then maybe demand wasn't quite as high when they actually came for the release. I certainly could see these characters being a little bit hit or miss with people. Fabius Bile, Dark Strider and the Saboteur are all kind of niche characters within their own factions. I think they're all realised well enough in their own way, but they're not going to be the top of the list for characters to get within the armies, even if they are the new releases, not compared with more generic fighty characters perhaps. I did find it kind of interesting as well that it looks like that Dark Strider is actually currently out of stock in the UK right now. Kind of weird that they're putting him into a discount bundle like this and then not having enough of them to sell to people who want them otherwise. Just seems like a bit of a strange move, and they probably could have found something else in their range that they had more of. Otherwise, I guess the Deathcopters might just be a little bit less popular because they appear in the Orcs Combat Patrol. I'd guess that a fair amount of players might be able to get enough Deathcopters that they need just from getting a box or 2 of that, and then they get the rest of the Orcs at a bit of a discount as well. Overall though, for £65, I feel like if I'd known exactly what the contents were of this, I would have actually been tempted to pick this up. Obviously, it's very easy to make that decision in hindsight, though. Without knowing, there's absolutely no way of predicting how Games Workshop is going to put miniatures in these boxes. It could have been something much less valuable, and I'm sure that these miniatures won't be enormously helpful to plenty of collectors out there. Otherwise, the other box that I've seen posted online is the Australian 40k supply drop. This one was apparently 170 Australian dollars, around about the same price as the UK one, maybe very slightly north of that. Obviously, Australians pay a massive markup for Games Workshop prices. For some reason, they just inflate the prices massively over there compared with most of the other places in the world. Shipping costs will be a little bit of it, but it seems that it's far beyond anything you'd expect for that. In any case, in the Australia box, you got a Killzone Morlock set, so that's just the terrain, not the miniatures with the kill team, sadly. A set of Chaos Space Marine Havocs, and again Mr. Fabius Bile cropping up once more, him and his Surgeon Acolyte. Overall, if you bought these kits separately at current Games Workshop prices, it'd be around 345 Australian dollars, so again just over a 50% discount. The equivalent of getting around about £65 or $110 cheaper than you would otherwise. This one does feel very different to the previous one. The box is massively dominated by that Killzone terrain. I guess it depended on whether or not you wanted terrain or models. I suppose at least the terrain is useful to the majority of people in 40k, and it's not faction specific. I feel like a lot of people might find terrain a little bit less exciting than models, but at least it's more likely to be generally useful, as opposed to the Chaos Space Marines, where if you don't collect Chaos, they're not likely to be quite as good. For the Morlock terrain, I do kind of wonder whether Games Workshop's doing particularly well with it or not. I must admit, compared with some of their other Ruin terrain sets and things, I feel like this one isn't maybe my favourite of them. It's the one that's themed around basically a new Imperial outpost. I feel like the radar tower and the bunker around that is quite cool, but the other little walls, comms tower and bunker, I just feel are really quite basic designs. Plus, maybe don't do enormous amounts for blocking line of sight and things to things like vehicles, which is kind of important in big 40k. Otherwise, I guess for the miniatures, at least they're both from the same faction this time, Chaos Space Marines. You could conceivably field them in the same army, though I feel like usually Fabius Bile's minions typically want to be charging into combat with their big roided up muscles, as opposed to shooting stuff. I guess Fabius is the common connection between the two kits. Does kind of imply that he might be a miniature that Games Workshop thought they were going to sell a lot of, and then really didn't. The Havocs are pretty cool though. A nice dangerous battle line unit for the Chaos Space Marines, maybe a little bit less optimal than things like the combat troops in the current codex, but still a fairly recent kit and not unusable. Overall, I don't think I'd necessarily rate either the Australia one or the UK one as outright better. Kind of depends on the exact things that you want. I'd guess the Australia one might be a bit more usable to more people with all the generic terrain that you could just use to build up a battlefield for any faction, plus the miniatures are maybe a bit more focused to one army. Here's just a couple of the box sets that they had last time they did these supply drops. These were Imperium box sets on offer for varying different prices. A UK one gave a whole load of Space Marine characters, including Adrax Agatone, Master Lazarus, Mephiston, Kosaro Khan, and a few other bits. The Australian equivalent of them was a knight and a whole bunch of other Space Marines, again some characters plus some scouts. It does seem that these box sets tend to be at least fairly character heavy. I feel like maybe Games Workshop comes out with a lot of character releases, and maybe some of them just don't do as well as they would like. Overall, I feel like these do give us a bit more information for the supply drops as to whether or not you might want to pick one up next time they come about, if of course you can get to the computer before all the scalpers do. It does seem that they really do tend to offer around about 50% off Games Workshop's marked prices. Objectively a good deal for Warhammer, but each individual kit might be more or less value depending on what miniatures come in it. They tend to be a bit character heavy, maybe more so than big battle line units, and lots of more niche stuff that isn't exactly the main choice for each faction. I can see why the scalpers and the resellers want to scoop up a bunch of them. They're almost guaranteed to be able to resell them for more, and it does mean, I guess, even if you were going to buy a box independently, I guess it would always be possible just to take the bits that you wanted, then resell the bits that you don't have as much use for, if you're not adverse to doing a bit of eBaying or something. I'm not sure it's the sort of thing that I'd recommend taking advantage of myself. I think in general, particularly having a bit of a big painting backlog myself, I wouldn't really want to add just more random units to it. I'd much rather just focus on the miniatures that I actually want to get, probably bought at a local gaming store for 15% off or potentially more. The Combat Patrol box sets again seem pretty much flatly superior to this as well. You get the faction that you want at around about somewhere 25 to 45% off depending on army. I'd say both of those are probably better deals overall, but just for a fun mystery box if you don't really care too much about what miniatures you're painting up, then by all means go for these if you want to. Let me know your thoughts anyway, and any other contents from the other boxes around the world are appreciated. Let me know down in the comments if you know any further. If you've enjoyed the video, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, where I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that one links down in the video description if you'd like to help keep these videos coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.